George, it's finally lovely to meet you because you're a man whose music has been in my life a long time, but a lot of people won't know exactly everything you've done, but I mean, you have covered everything, you know, and you've, you know, received so many awards, Oscars, all that sort of stuff, nominations. What's it like for you now when you look at some of your work, like the new album today that you've got?
Well, I feel very lucky, I mean, first of all, because the work that I do has always depended on other people working. So I've been very fortunate. I feel like the butler at a, you know, who's worked at some of the great houses, that I've been able to write music for some really wonderful films and things in the theatre and on television with some great people. And yeah, and I still can and do, and it's what I love, so it's good. And also I work, and I suppose this project, this album, is about something else as well, which is that the great privilege of writing music in any form is the fact that you get to work with great musicians.
Yeah.
And this album is the result, in a way, of my working with a really great musician who has made this album of my music, and Simon Chamberlain, and he's just a wonderful player. So in all those ways, yeah, it's good. It's been very, very good.
Can we talk about one of my favourite things, Mrs. Henderson Presents?
Yes.
I loved that, I have to say. I was always fascinated. I was lucky enough to meet one or two of the original Windmill Girls. And I love that story because I thought it was... it's a fascinating story when you think about it, because it's revolutionary in a sense. With all those weird characters like Mrs. Henderson and Vivian Van Damme and all the comics that got a break on this. Essentially, they dressed it up, but it would be, you know, dancers, maybe, movement, whatever you want to call it. What was the experience like for you coming up, you know, with the music for that? What was that like? How did you come around?
Well, of course, it had two incarnations because I did it as a film.
Yeah.
And then it became a musical, and Simon Chamberlain, who plays the piano album that we've just done,
yeah.
He and I wrote, he was the musical director on the film. Wow. Because he's played for me so many times.
Yeah.
And I said to him, you know, I think this should be a musical. And he said, oh, well, if it's a musical, he said, listen, if it's a musical, he said, he said, he's very straight talking. He's from Mansfield.
Oh, well, Nottinghamshire, yeah.
Yes, yes. He said, if it's going to be a musical, he said, you've got to let me write it with you, because when we did the film, we did so much research into the music of England in the 1930s and 40s, and it was a really interesting period in music in England, because it was pre the arrival of swing. You know, swing really came from America in a big way during the war, during the 40s, because of Glenn Miller and people like that.
Yeah.
But the American servicemen had records of swing and all of that. Before that, in England, there was a huge business in dance bands.
Yeah.
And the dance bands of the 30s in London were unbelievably celebrated and well paid.
Yeah.
Enormously well paid.
Well, they were on radio record and in hotels,
and in hotels.
Yeah.
And there's a story, you know, that when the musicians turned up at the Mayfair Hotel, they would drive up to the front. Someone would park their car. This is just the bass player, and a bellhop would carry his bass to the stand, you know. Yeah. And they say Geraldo was in 1930 something was paid 100,000 a year.
Wow, in that period.
I mean, that's huge, huge money.
Yeah.
And the music that they played wasn't. It was kind of in that really, really lovely place between ragtime and the arrival of swing. And it had a very, very nice. So in the film, for example, there's a wonderful song which I didn't write, but we recorded, which Will Young sang, called "The Girl in the Little Green Hat."
Yeah.
And it's just a perfect example of the music of that time.
Yeah.
Kind of cute, witty, straight up and down, beautifully written,
Yeah.
but not with swing.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, we did the show, and the show, I thought, it's a subject I love. I mean, it's in a way it's dubious as a subject, because really, what is it about? Is it about the exploitation of women?
Yeah.
Or is it about the liberation of women? And I think the writers of both the film and the show felt that it was a story about women being in control.
I thought that personally. I thought it was like it probably was the first time that they felt they were in control.
Yes.
You know, it was their choice.
Yes,
to do
exactly.
this.
And
Yeah.
and that somehow they were now, you know, several commentators and critics felt very, very differently about it. And
What do they know, George? Trust me.
well, I think that I think it's just I think that the intention of it was literally to tell the story from their point of view.
Yeah.
It focused on that one girl and sort of her journey, and that was the point. You can't really duck out of the fact that, you know, the windmill was a place where loads of servicemen went, and they were desperate, you know, I mean, it was just, you can't really get out of that. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
But, you know, but it's a long time ago, and I think that I'm not sure necessarily that I think it's very difficult to tell historical stories
Yeah.
without reflecting the social attitudes at the time. It's very difficult, and if you go there, you know, as L.P. Hartley said, the past is a foreign country. It's too dangerous to go there.
Yeah.
If you go there with a story, you have to take it on the chin. If somebody says, "Well, I'm sorry, but this is politically incorrect," you have to say, "Yeah, well, I know, but that's the story we're telling.
Yeah,
That's
and
the time."
you can't. That's what I was thinking even about the modern times. That's what they did. You know, that was. I mean, you know, as I say, we were lucky enough to meet a few of them, and some of them were quite brazen about it. You know, but it was a means to an end. You know, they were young, they got signed up, and if you think about it, they've gone from nothing to being in a West End theatre.
Yeah.
And getting paid.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I thought it was a wonderful piece of work. Let me tell you, I loved it.